We live in a time where masculinity is shamed and men don't know what it means to be a man. As a pastor and counselor, I've spent the better part of my life equipping and training others. My goal with this show is to translate my hard-earned experience into tools and tactics to help you become stronger as a man. This is the BraveCo podcast. I'm your host, Jason Valentin. Hey man, I want to share with you an opportunity to join an online event hosted by BraveCo. If you're hungry to experience community, breakthrough, and hope with like-minded men, I want you to join us at www.bravecochallenge.com. Now, let's get back to this week's episode. Welcome to the BraveCo podcast. I'm your host, Jason Valentin. Today, we're going to talk about addiction. Back in the 1970s, there was a series of experiments called the Rat Park experiment. And if you've never checked out these experiments, I highly recommend it. They're fascinating. But what had happened is researchers were trying to figure out what makes drugs so addictive. And they had done a series of studies in the 60s on rats. And basically what had originally happened is that they would take these rats one at a time and they would put them in a cage with two different water bottles. One water bottle was laced with drugs, different kinds of drugs. And then the other water bottle would just be nothing but water. And the interesting thing that they found about this experiment is that every single time, 100% of the time, the rats overdosed on drugs and died. So therefore, as you can imagine, the conclusion for the scientists were that drugs were just so incredibly addictive. Like the drug itself had these hooks that if you did cocaine or if you did meth or if you did whatever, didn't methamphetamines, that once you did them, now you're hooked because of course these rats died. Well, another scientist in the 70s started to look at that old research and went, man, I wonder if that's fully accurate, because he said, I wonder what would happen if you put more rats in the cage and if you made it fun. And so he created this rat park, right? He put loads of rats in a cage together. So they had community. He put fun things for them to do, from, the wheels to balls to the rats could have sex and they could socialize. And then he put the same two water bottles in the cage. He mimicked it. And what he found is phenomenal. He found that rats would occasionally ingest the drug-laced water, but not one rat actually overdosed. They would only use it recreationally. And instead, the rats would mostly just hang out, have fun, drink the normal water, and abstain from the drug-laced water bottle. And so his conclusion was that addiction is more about the cage that you live in than the substance that you take. Addiction is more about the cage that you're in. It's all about the cage that you're in. Now, it's really interesting when you start to think about addiction from that perspective, right? Because most people, the way that we have typically tried to address addiction, at least in my generation, is we would try to get kids to not take drugs. Well, that's valiant and there's room for that. Or we try to get people to not look at pornography. So we'd say, porn's bad. It funds sex trafficking. It degrades women. It has all these negative side effects. on your mind and on your body, physical effects like erectile dysfunction and um, social anxiety, ADD, all these things, which is totally true. But we typically attack or combat addiction from this angle and really try to get people to stop using it, using the substance, not really fully understanding that the drugs isn't really the problem. Now, that's not going to be a shocker to you. If you're listening to this, you would probably know, like, I know drugs aren't the problem. Well, then what is the problem? What's the real problem? What's actually driving the addiction? And this is what they really began to study at in the 70s. So you have these rats that when they get put into a cage all alone, there's no connection, there's no fun, there's no hopes. These rats basically begin to just medicate the pain that they're in. So addiction starts, this is an interesting thought. Addiction starts when you can no longer bear being present in your own life. Addiction starts for us when we can no longer bear being present in our own life. That's a powerful statement. I didn't come up with that, by the way. I can't even remember who came up with that. That is a powerful, powerful statement. Well, most people got hooked or started to medicate their pain at a very, very young age. When you think about when was the first time that you didn't want to be present in your own life? Were you born into a home where your parents really loved you? If you were, then probably much later. Was it in high school when you went through a breakup or you felt insecure or you felt stupid? When I look back at my life, addiction started very early in my life, which I've talked about on this podcast before. Addiction for me started around 10, 11 years old. I had lots of anxiety that, believe it or not, I didn't even know I had. I didn't know to label it as anxiety, but the fear of death. I was constantly afraid that something was wrong with me. I had irrational fear. I was afraid of dying, that I was going to die, that someone was going to kidnap me, that I just had all these different fears throughout my life. And I began to use masturbation as a way to comfort myself to the point where I could not masturbate in a day, several times a day. And that grew into this crazy, out of control addiction that took me years, lots of years to overcome, to the point where at 14, my friends found porn and they found, VHS tapes back before. I mean, probably most of you guys won't even remember or haven't watched the VHS tape, but growing up, I mean, that's what we had. We had VHS tapes and we had Playboy magazines. And that was where I got introduced to porn. And actually a little bit before that, it was Showtime on a fuzzy screen. So I had TV in my room so that we could play like Tecmo football and Nintendo basically, and Super Nintendo, with my friends. And we didn't have any channels. We didn't subscribe to any channels, but in Weaverville in the mountains, like you could flip through the different channels and through like a really fuzzy screen, you could watch Showtime or things like that. Well, man, at 14 years old, Red Shoe Diaries, Showtime, late night Showtime was like, probably wouldn't be a massive deal today because of what everyone has access to. But back then it was like the go-to. And that became so medicating for me, feeling stressed, feel insecure, feel bored. That was my go-to. And it took me a very long time to really get over that and address that in my life. But when we go back and look at, think about where addiction started in your life. Most people's lives, it starts when they're young because the pain starts when they're really young. And the average kid is getting introduced to pornography from about 8 to 11 years old now, psychologists are saying. That's early, man. One, because it's so accessible. You can get it on your, phone, your computer. Um, excuse me. You can get it on, just anywhere. It's everywhere. It's everywhere now, where it used to be pretty hard to get. And not only that, but it's super acceptable. Back when I was a kid, you didn't really know a lot of other kids and parents that were looking at porn. It it wasn't like the cool thing to do. Getting nudes in high school, that wasn't popular. Being able to just sleep around was like, that's what the bad people did. Nowadays, pretty normal. That stuff's super normal. Well, you introduce these kids nowadays and adults that have tons of pain in their life, and you make it really normal and take the conviction away, even the healthy peer pressure that I grew up under to abstain from that stuff. And man, we have just full blown problems, just people, just completely out of control and not really often putting two and two together. It's interesting. Also, I see a lot of men, when we're talking about porn, especially, a lot of men move out of one addiction from one prison into a completely other prison. And to me, that is, it's an accountability prison. And before you shut this off and whatever, think I'm talking heresy. It's true. I worked with sexual addicts for a very long time. And what I saw is that although the guys could stop using porn or sleeping around or using women or other men or masturbating, what they would get stuck in is they would get stuck in this prison of, I can't go to Blockbuster Video when we used to go to Blockbuster Video. I can't get on my phone. I have all these devices to track, where I've been. And my mind is this minefield. The world is a minefield. It's a land minefield that is just waiting to explode me. Now, on one side of it, again, before you end this podcast, on one side of it, I fully understand that there needs to be some serious precautions and safety measures when you're coming out of a full-blown addiction. Absolutely. Feel free to get rid of your computer. It's not worth it. Feel free to get rid of a cell phone that you can surf the internet on. Absolutely. Feel free to put protections on your computer. But at some point, it would be my hope that every man would graduate from the place of being so bound by fear and bound by these limitations, that he would be stuck in another prison. Now, is that to say, hey, I just search whatever I want to on the internet? Absolutely not. But I've watched so many men get stuck and end up forever inside of their accountability group. And all they're ever talking about is where they messed up and how they almost messed up and what they almost messed up about. And all they talk about, they won't share, their story to the outside world. And we talked about that in Weaponizing Your Story. So if you guys remember back to that podcast, we've talked about weaponizing your story and coming to the point where you are no longer ashamed of your story. Because again, your story, if you're ashamed of the things that you were stuck in or are stuck in, that just keeps you stuck there longer. And that becomes a prison. So I've just watched so many guys never reach full freedom because of the fear of being made fun of, the fear of being the outlier, the fear of also falling back and getting stuck into it instead of really going back and addressing, well, what's driving this addiction? What's the fuel behind it? And because if you think that the porn's fueling it, you're wrong. If you think that women are fueling your addiction, you're wrong. If you think that masturbation is the fuel to your addiction, you're 100% absolutely wrong. If you think that marijuana or cocaine or meth is the thing that's fueling it. Now, do I think that you could be addicted to those things? Absolutely. But that's not the fuel. That's not what started it. And it certainly isn't what's going to end it. Because on the flip side, I'll share a really interesting story. On the flip side, you can stop something and still be bound by it. I was watching Biggest Loser, this television series, probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, maybe even longer. It's basically whoever loses the most weight in, I think it's 9 months, wins. And these people come on, they get selected from men and women from all over the country, all different backgrounds and life experiences. And they all have, an exorbitant amount of weight that they need to lose. And you see that they work with the trainers for probably 5 or 6 months and get to the point where they really understand how to eat well, and they really understand how to work out and how to take care of themselves. And then they leave and they go home for a couple of months. And there's this big reveal. There's this big finale. And at the finale, that's where the audience, the TV audience, gets to see these people after not seeing them for a couple of months. And same with the trainers. The trainers haven't seen them for a couple of months. And there's going to be this really big reveal. And we'll find out who the biggest loser is. Pretty awesome. So I was super into the show. It's just fun to watch people get breakthrough, lose weight, fun to address some of the issues in their life and get after it. Well, there was this girl, I think her name was Shannon in the show. I can't remember 100%, but she had been doing really good and losing a lot of weight. And she was kind of tied with a couple other people. And when coming in, I think she was like 260 pounds. When she came back, maybe it's like 6 months later. I can't even remember how long. When she came back, she was literally anorexic. And when she stepped on to the stage, like they did this big reveal and welcome Shannon, she walks out and you could hear the crowd on TV gasp. Now, part of it was because, oh my gosh, she's lost so much weight. But the other side was people were like, oh my gosh, she looked skin and bones. Her arms are super skinny. Her cheeks were sucked in. You could see, her facial structure in a way that you probably shouldn't be able to. I mean, the girl had gone from like 200 and something pounds to like 119, 114 pounds, clearly anorexic. And then it came out later on, just like a week after, like that she was anorexic. And then there was all this debate, like, is the biggest loser actually helping people or are they really hurting people? Are they exchanging one addiction for the other? And it's a classic example, guys, of what happens when we don't address the real driver. See, for Shannon, the driver wasn't food. The driving force behind what was her desire to consume and to binge wasn't, oh, I'm just hungry. I need more, better food. I have to have food. No, absolutely not. It was the internal condition that she was in. And here's the thing about addiction is that our addiction gives us an addiction is this idea that I have control over what I don't have, over the powerless areas in my life. So let me say it maybe a little bit differently. Our addiction is an attempt to get control over what we don't have control over. So if you are in pain, your addiction, right, your drug use is an attempt to manage the pain, get control of the pain. If you feel lonely, if you feel powerless, right, and you're using women to feel powerful, well, your addiction, your using women is your ability to control what you feel out of control of. And this, going back to Shannon, this girl, she had found so much comfort from the pain that was in her life. So she ate and she numbed herself with that. Well, when that was gone, what did she do? Unconsciously, she scrambled to, well, now I feel powerful by not eating. I feel powerful by fasting. I feel powerful by abstaining, by throwing up. Throwing up gives me a sense of peace. When I feel anxiety all day long, I go and I throw up, and that gives me a sense of release of endorphins, a sense of peace. I get to calm down, and whoop, we're back. We're right back in another cycle. It's so important that you actually understand what addiction really is, because you'll spend so much time trying to not do things, trying to, quit smoking pot, trying to not masturbate, not look at porn, not think bad thoughts. And although that's a good starting point, so don't hear me say, don't do that. That's a good starting point. That's not a finish point. And when I hear people that are, I'm not going to drink anymore, but they're not actually doing the inner work. Well, why were you drinking? What's the driving force behind that? Or I'm no longer, I'm no longer going to lie. Well, what's the driving force behind you lying? What's driving that? Because you'll just trade one thing for another. You'll trade working out, obsessively working out, for drinking. And although that's better, it's still a prison. You have to have it. You're dependent upon it. You have to have it in order to feel, quote unquote, good about yourself, in order to cope. Or you go from bulimia or anorexia to, again, working out full time, or to men or to women, or to, you just trade one thing for the next. And man, it's so sad, because you'll spend, if you just stop and you go, what's actually driving me? You'll spend so much less time fixing that issue than you will trying to figure out how to sustain this life of chaos through addiction. Because addiction is a complete thief. It robs you. It robs the people around you. It's a false sense of power and security and peace and love. And it's a false world. There's a few steps that I think everyone should take. If you're feeling like, man, I'm really stuck. The first one is, you got to look at yourself. You got to look at yourself, like we've been talking about, and go, where's this coming from? Do I love me? Do I love my story? We talked about that on Weaponizing Your Story. Do I feel worthy of love? Because if you don't feel worthy of love and you don't love your story, your life's full of pain. And again, you're going to have to medicate that, because addiction starts when you can no longer bear being present in your own life. So when you're living a life, when you look in the mirror and you don't love you, Brené Brown says it like this. She says, people who love themselves, they believe that their story is what makes them lovable, makes them worthy of love. They love the good things about themselves and the things that they haven't done super good. They've learned to accept their story. That's really challenging. It's super challenging. Again, when you grow up in a home where you are told, when you were born into You are not worthy of love. When you were told through your parents' actions that you don't matter because they didn't spend time with you, because they were too busy, because they didn't know how. Now, I'm not saying it's all their fault. I'm saying they may not have known how, but the fact of the matter is the message that got sent to you, if you lived in a home like that, is you're not enough. You're not worthy of love. That's a ton of pain. And you're going to have to confront that story that was handed to you. See, where you're at today may not be your fault. It may just be your responsibility. In that, what I mean is a lot of what you see today, a lot of what you feel today, a lot of what you desire today, a lot of what you think is normal and like if you don't think that you are worthy of love, you probably weren't the originator of that message, the author of that message. My guess is somebody created that story for you, that storyline, introduced that to you, and now you're running with it and you just reinforce it through all these different places in your life. And the challenge is you've got to untangle that, unwind that, and really run it back. You got to start again going, I need to get to a place where I believe I'm worthy of love. Because until then, you may stop porn, you may stop drugs, you may stop drinking, you may stop using women or men. But you're going to have to live in a prison because you're starving, because you don't like you don't love you, wishing that you're somebody else, wishing that you lived a different life. Those are all ways that we see ourselves as either a victim or it's a way that we also reject ourselves. Oh, I wish I was that guy. Well, you're not that guy. And if you wish that you're that guy, it says that you also wish that you weren't this guy. There's a lot of pain wrapped up in that. I'm not trying to kick a dead horse. I'm trying to open up our eyes so that you can start to pinpoint and really dial in, man, until I build a life that's full of beauty, until I build a life that I really love, until I build a life that I'm proud of, until I am proud of me and my story and really love me and my story, I am going to be searching for things to fill this void, this gap. And that 100% of the time leads me down paths of destruction and pain. And so, step one, learn to love you. What are some great ways to do that? Healthy boundaries. Super hard to feel like you are caring for yourself. That's what self-love is. Change the word love for care, self-care, that you are taking care of yourself unless you are really working on having good, healthy boundaries. And then learning what your needs are and meeting those. You have to put those two together, right? Because without boundaries and without needs, there's no way to actually feel cared for from yourself or in another relationship. Without boundaries and without needs. Boundaries aren't this thing that keeps people out. Boundaries are actually this thing that helps people know how to care for you. I have a door on the front of my house, as do you, and that door is not meant to keep everyone out. That's a secondary purpose. The first purpose of that door is to create a way for people to come into my house. If it was just to keep people out, instead of my door opening to the inside, it would open to the outside. And here's why. What's harder to break down? Is it harder to kick a door in that opens in, or is it harder to kick a door in that opens out? It's harder to kick a door in that opens out. So these doors in our homes weren't meant to keep people out. They're meant to give people a way to come in. There's a right way to come into my house and a wrong way to come into my house. If you knock on my door in a polite way, I know, one, you're a normal human being, and I feel cared for by that on some level. If you come up to my door and you knock excessively, I don't feel cared for by that. Worse, if you just walk in my door, now we're going to have a conversation. If you break down my door, it's a fight for sure. 100% of the time. Anybody that comes to my door and breaks my door down, they're going to get my full force, my full wrath, because they are saying, I am not protecting you. I'm not going to care for you. I have my best interest in mind. Okay. Think about if I didn't have a door in my house. Proverbs says it like this: a man who lacks boundaries is like a city whose walls broken down. Or a man who lacks self-control is like a city whose walls are broken down. When there is no walls to your city, when there's no door to your house, anybody just comes in and out and takes whatever they want, and therefore diminishes the value of that sacred space, you. If you're going to get to a place where you love your story, where you love you, you have to have these gates in your life that protect yourself, that has needs attached to it, healthy needs. You all have body, soul, spirit needs. Maybe we'll do a podcast on that next or something, but we all have these needs and these boundaries that if you don't take care of them, you're in pain. But furthermore, when we do take care of them, we send a message to ourselves and to the world around us. I am worthy of love. I'm worthy of adoration. I'm worthy of patience and time and all kindness. And that begins to counteract the message that you were sent, assuming that you were sent a painful message from your home. Now, does all addiction start from the home? Golly, I don't think all of it, but a freaking lot of it does. I think the majority of addiction starts from what happened in the home. And I think that you'll see psychologists back that up, that kids not feeling cared for, not being poured into, not being taken care of, getting harsh messages, mixed signals sent to them repeatedly, not having to fend for themselves, has caused so much abuse and trauma, on top of the abuse, the actual emotional, physical, sexual abuse, spiritual abuse that's happened to kids. Kids just getting used and abused has caused such a massive deficit and so much pain in people's lives. So, I do think that most of it comes from there. The other side of that is addiction also starts later on in life. And the thing that we have to do is wind back the tape and go, where did this start in my life? And focus on it head on. Go after it head on. Put some protections on your computer if you need to. Put some boundaries on your phone. Get some accountability. But know that the goal isn't to live there. That's a good place to start. But we want to come all the way through into the other side where you trust you, where you trust you to the point because you know that you've dealt with the root issue, whether it's the pain that you got from your childhood, whether it's the way that you see yourself, whether it's loneliness, whether it's, I just have so many stories, different stories, which mostly started at home or from a boyfriend or a girlfriend, but that message was typically reinforced by what happened at home. And so guys, I want you to start, just, if you're stuck in addiction, just for starters, let's remove the belief that what I'm struggling with right now is because of porn. Negative. It's not, or it's because of drugs, or it's because it's that root issue. It's the thing that's driving, it's the pain. It's you not being able to bear being present in your own life. Next step is you got to love you. You got to start to set some boundaries. So, get the Boundaries book by Townsend and Cloud. I partnered those two words together. Get the Boundaries book and begin to read the Boundaries book. The Transformation Center in Redding, California, you can go to www.transformationcenter.com .org, I believe. Could be .com. I'll put a link to it. Is also a great place for sexual addiction. We have a lot of success there. There's other great places to begin to attack sexual addiction that way. Also, drug abuse and alcohol abuse as well. And so, but my main thing today wasn't even to teach people how to get out of addiction, mostly to focus on what is addiction and where is it coming from, and to remove this lie, this belief that I have to just quit using this substance. I have to just quit overeating. I have to just, and then I'll be addiction free. No, you won't. You'll find another one to go to. And to begin to start that process, we can dive deeper in later to, okay, what are some real resources and real ways to begin to heal from addiction? The starting point, though, is you loving your story, you accepting your story, you getting to a place with God that you do a lot of healing, what your parents said about you, what your friends said about you, what your biggest mistakes said about you, and you begin to find real healing, real acceptance from that, so that we can begin to put some healthy boundaries up, have some healthy needs, and begin to meet your needs in a healthy way. Because again, addiction is our way of meeting our needs in an unhealthy way. So if I learn how to meet my needs in a healthy way, boom, I am undoing that cycle that's been started in my life. So guys, hopefully this was helpful for you. If you love our podcast, would you go on and subscribe, like and subscribe to our podcast, share it with a friend. We'll be back next week, and super looking forward to next week. Thanks so much for listening. Have an incredible week. Hey guys, thanks so much for listening to the BraveCo podcast. If you like this podcast, would you please rate it, review it, leave us a great comment. And if you like this episode in particular, share it with your friends and family. That helps us to spread the word. Guys, stay brave. We'll see you next week.